Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday. I am Zoya Claus, Vice Chair of the CAR Young Professional Network Committee, and I welcome you to the July Latte and Learn. Awesome. So let me go back. This session is focused on navigating long-term care in the greater Charlottesville area. Our guest speaker is Dr. Jenny Inker. Dr. Jenny Inker is Assistant Professor of Gerontology and the Co-Program Director for the Assisted Living Administration Specialty Area in the Masters in Gerontology program at the College of Health Professions at Virginia Commonwealth University. She teaches sociology of aging and human values, and financial management for gerontological leaders. Her research interests include the disruption of ageism in healthcare and long-term care settings, and the recognition of elderhood as a distinct and valuable life stage for both individuals and society. Jenny has served on the Virginia Board of Long-Term Care Administrators since 2019 and was elected chair of the board in 2022. Dr. Inker, I will now hand over the session to you.
Thank you so much, Zoya. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be back with you today to talk about navigating long-term care, which is at the same time complex and relatively straightforward. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to make it seem straightforward to you so that you can assist the clients that you work with. I suspect that this information may be useful personally as well. Everybody is growing older. Everybody has older family members. So hopefully it'll be of use both professionally and personally. So here's what we're going to do in the hour that we have together this morning. We'll talk very briefly about why people seek out long-term care options, what would drive that decision. We'll talk about the types and the levels of long-term care that are available, as well as what they tend to cost or the range of costs and what are the methods of payment. And then we're going to spend some time looking up communities. I'm going to show you how to find options in the greater Charlottesville region so that you can look up options, and then talk briefly about how you might assess the quality of the options, because that's really an important part of this as well. And I think we should have time to have a look at a resource guide that I've prepared for you that I know is going to be distributed after the call. So what causes people to move into long-term care? Well, you won't be surprised to learn that it's generally not a choice that people make because it's a place they really, really want to go. These are usually triggered by a need, these moves, although occasionally you'll have somebody who has been paying for a long-term care insurance policy for years and wants to use it. And so I have seen people move into long-term care for that reason. But for the most part, it's a health emergency. It could be the death of a spouse who was the main caregiver, or often because somebody is experiencing a cognitive decline as a result of a dementia and is no longer safe at home, or the caregiver can no longer cope with the caregiving at home. And you'll see other reasons here, like frequently falling, and so the family members may feel that an older person is not safe at home. Depression or social isolation is a reason that people worry about people aging in place at home in the community, is one of the great benefits of moving into a congregate care community, that you get this built-in social engagement. I don't know so much about changes in financial status. I'm not exactly sure what Nexus Insights had in mind there. And you can see, again, indicators that somebody might not be doing well at home: losing weight, not eating, forgetting to take medication. Sometimes even you've probably seen in your professional work, hoarding behaviors, where people become very isolated and then they start to accumulate a lot of stuff in a house to the point where it may not even become possible to really have any kind of quality of life there. And so any of these things are things that might trigger an individual themselves, but very often actually an adult child or other family member who sees these changes and says, I'm really concerned about this. Now, that's a live link to the Nexus Insights report. I won't link to it right now. They're a consultancy, and that report is actually about how difficult it is to navigate long-term care and how complex and fragmented the system is. So that report is just, it's advocating for something that doesn't currently exist, which is like they are advocating for centers that could be used to help people navigate. But I'm going to show you how to navigate. There are ways to navigate this landscape of long-term care, and I'm going to teach them to you this morning. So let's look at types and levels of long-term care. This is a little bit covering ground that I've covered before in other presentations, but we're going to go into more detail here. And we're going to begin with a sort of complicated looking slide, but I'm just going to break it down for you. So long-term care exists along a continuum, meaning it goes from a very light touch to very intensive services. So you'll see as you move down the chart, level of disability at the top is the least level of disability, and that downward pointing arrow is indicating levels of disability increase. So you'll see off to the right, instrumental activities of daily living, IADLs, and activities of daily living, those are ADLs. These are the list of things that will cause somebody to need long-term care if they cannot manage these on their own or with help from family members. So think about activities of daily living as the very basic things that we learn to do as young children: how to bathe and groom ourselves, how to get dressed, how to go to the bathroom, how to walk, how to get out of a chair, out of a bed, and how to eat a meal. Whereas the IADLs, the instrumental activities of daily living, are things that we tend to learn and become competent at as teenagers and young adults. We learn how to shop for things that we need, include food, how to prepare a meal, how to do household chores, take care of our pets, pay our bills, this kind of thing. So when people start to have difficulties with ADLs or IADLs, this is often a trigger for considering long-term care. And you will see as level of disability increases, we're going down each level, which I'm going to talk about in detail. As those needs increase, the costs of the care increase naturally because people are needing more staff assistance. It's taking longer to deliver all of the assistance that they need. And you'll see on this continuum that the continuum actually begins at home, that many people actually begin with receiving home-based services, so staying in their own home. Maybe they're getting homemaker services, that's somebody coming in and helping with those instrumental activities of daily living, maybe coming and preparing a couple of meals or tidying up, maybe providing a little bit of companionship. But when people start needing help with ADLs, that is actually a different type of home care. I'm not going to go into this today, but homemaker services don't require the same kind of regulation as personal care, because with personal care, you have your hands on another person. And so there's a different licensing requirement for that. And those services are also more expensive. For people, you'll see that little CI there at the top. That just stands for cognitive impairment. So this is somebody who is experiencing changes in memory and cognition. So they may be experiencing changes in their short-term memory, longer-term memory remaining intact for longer, because this is how the dementia diseases, which dementia is an umbrella term for a number of neurodegenerative diseases, tend to preserve long-term memory for longer. Short-term memory is affected more quickly. And cognition is also affected, apart from memory, in terms of people's ability to use what's called executive function. So people start to become confused about the sequence of activities, what they should do in what order, and also start to have difficulty with recognizing things like not understanding, seeing a toothbrush and understanding they're meant to brush their teeth, but not being clear about how to get started with that, how to do that. So people who are living in the community can sometimes, often, I would say, benefit from adult daycare, which is an adult day programs, or where people are usually taken or transported to a community center where there's programming for them during the day, and then would return to their home in the evening. but their needs will be relatively low, except for one exception, which I'll talk about later. Sometimes people go into long-term care for short respite periods. Many long-term care communities will offer respite for the short term, and they'll do so in the hope that the person will actually make that into a permanent stay. We won't talk about hospice today. Hospice care is available in all long-term care. It's simply end-of-life care that a doctor has to certify that you need because the doctor believes you have 6 months or less to live. And then we get into residential care, moving down that continuum, down that slanted arrow. Residential care, we're not really going to talk about today. There is actually only one licensed residential care facility in the greater Charlottesville region. It's called Monticello Ridge. And this kind of care, I'll talk about it real briefly in a bit, but this care is not that common. It's a very low level care. We will talk more in depth about assisted living facilities, which is a higher level of care, and we'll talk about skilled nursing facilities and PACE programs. So as well as understanding that as the level of disability increases, the need increases, and therefore the cost increases. Also note that there's a broad division between communities or facilities where care is only scheduled versus both scheduled and unscheduled. So if you say, have homemaker or personal care services, or basically saying, okay, if somebody's going to come visit me on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and they're going to give me a shower in the morning, or they'll be here every day to prepare my breakfast and lunch and leave me a dinner, but it's scheduled. The higher levels of care offer scheduled care, and they do schedule their care, but they will also offer unscheduled care. So anything you need 24/7, they will be able to respond to your need. And that's one of the reasons why these higher levels of care are more expensive, because they require more intensive staffing. So let's talk briefly about residential care. As I said, it's a very minimal kind of assistance. Sometimes these are called boarding care homes. Virginia calls them residential care facilities. They are licensed by the Department of Social Services, and the administrator has to be licensed by the Virginia Department of Health Professions. So you have this double protection of the facility being licensed and the administrator being licensed. People who can be accepted into residential care have to be capable of maintaining themselves independently with only very minimal assistance. So no more than one need for help with an activity of daily living. Very often that will be medication administration, but they will be able to do everything else themselves. Or they might have the need for one or more instrumental activities of daily living, like maybe they need help, getting a meal. So, or paying some bills. So Monticello Ridge is your only residential care facility in the greater Charlottesville region. And if you look it up, I don't think it has a website. You might be able to look it up. It is literally a brick rancher style home. And that's what these very often are, very small, like 4 to 8 maximum residents in them, kind of like boarding care. The old vision of a boarding house would probably be the best approximation. Okay, then we have assisted living facilities. So we're moving up the continuum, or down the continuum, if you like, in terms of level of care required. So these are considered social models of care. They're considered non-medical, yet they do provide something called health oversight. In Virginia, they do not require a nurse to be like a registered nurse to be on the staff. You have to have oversight by a registered nurse, but you don't have to have a registered nurse actually in the community. So very often these are staffed by licensed practical nurses, LPNs, and registered medication aides and certified nursing aides. So they don't have the higher levels of qualified staff in them typically. They provide congregate care, so it's a group setting. You'll have individual apartments. Sometimes you'll have shared apartments or rooms. And then you'll have communal areas, communal dining and living areas, as well as people's private spaces. These facilities are all licensed by the Virginia Department of Social Services, who oversees the quality of the care. and the administrator is licensed by the Virginia Department of Health Professions. And so again, you have this protection of this double licensure, and these two agencies talk to each other. So if Virginia Department of Social Services finds a problem with one of these facilities, they will tell DHP, who will start looking into the administrator. So they offer 24-hour supervision with moderate assistance, both scheduled and unscheduled. So your typical assisted living client is somebody who needs help with 2 or more activities of daily living. Typically, they will need help with medication administration. They will need help with bathing, often dressing, for some people, toileting. And then they provide 3 meals every day, plus unlimited snacks 24/7. They're required to provide activity programming that engages people across all the different wellness dimensions. So purposeful activities, that, things like exercise programs, social activities, faith-based activities, all kinds of things. And then they also are required to provide transportation to things like outside appointments, or to take people out to eat, or to take them on outings. So that's assisted living facilities. And in just a little bit, I'm going to show you how to look those up. So we'll have a look at a couple in your region. There is then memory care. Memory care is for people with moderate to severe dementia. So these are locked units, secure units, they're often called. And they can be part of an assisted living facility, or part of a skilled nursing facility, or they can be standalone facilities. Now, depending on how they are configured, their licensing may be different. If they're part of an assisted living community, they're going to be licensed by Department of Social Services. If they are part of a nursing home, they'll be licensed by the Department of Health in Virginia and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is CMS. So it depends who licenses them, depends on their setup. But whoever is the administrator is also licensed by the Virginia Department of Health Professions, DHP. Now, these locked units provide 24-hour care, again, scheduled and unscheduled, but they have higher staffing ratios. Their programming for activities is dementia specific, because, as you can imagine, we're talking about people who are having difficulty with memory. And so the programming will be smaller scale. It'll be more focused on enjoying the moment, because people may not remember the activity that they just did, but the goal is, as long as people are enjoying themselves in the moment, that's the goal. And they'll also offer transportation. They also have other features. They'll be very often very carefully planned in terms of how they're decorated and what the furniture and furnishings look like, because one of the things that happens to people who live with dementia is that one of the disruptions to cognition is things like depth perception. And so when you get these crazy carpet patterns with high contrast between light and dark colors, it can look like a hole in the floor to somebody with dementia, so it can make them scared to walk across it. And you'll also find things like flower arrangements will be edible. And you'll just see a very different kind of vibe, like with dining. A lot of times people with dementia like to walk around. They want to be very active. And so people will not sit still at a table and may not remember what cutlery is for anymore, and so we'll eat with our hands, and we'll eat finger food while they're walking around. So it's a very different setup specifically for people who are experiencing these cognitive challenges. Sorry, we then have skilled nursing facilities. These facilities are more heavily licensed than memory care and assisted living. They are licensed by the Virginia Department of Health. They're licensed by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. I don't know, I'm not sure why I have VDSS on there, actually, because that's a mistake. They don't license these. It's the health department. But again, the administrator is licensed by DHP. Now, skilled nursing facilities can be kind of confusing, because they offer both short-term rehab beds and long-term care beds. And the methods of payment for these two types of stays are different. So they also offer 2 different types of care. They offer the assistance with activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. That's intermediate care. And they offer what's called skilled care. This is This is where the skilled comes in the name skilled nursing facilities. They are able to take care of wounds. They're able to do IV therapies, manage injections, and do catheter care. They can also manage ventilator care. So they can take people with higher medical needs than assisted living can take. And they also offer therapy. You will see these therapies in assisted living as well, but they're very, very prominent in skilled nursing facilities. So you can imagine, say I'm an 85-year-old woman, I have a fall at home, break my hip, spend some time in hospital. I might go to a skilled nursing facility for a rehab stay. Maybe I have a wound maybe they had to do surgery on my broken hip and I have a wound. They'll treat my wound. They'll use physical therapy and occupational therapy to get me back up on my feet and walking, and then I'll return home. That's different from somebody who enters a skilled nursing facility for a long-term stay, meaning they're not going to go home again. They're going to end their days in this facility because their daily level of care is so high that they need this assistance. Now, and again, they offer all the meals, snacks, activity programming, transportation. Many of these models are institutional, but not all. Now, these are not in your region, but these are two interesting models to think about. One is the Virginia Mennonite Retirement Community in Harrisonburg, which is what's called a greenhouse model. It is meant to be more home-like. Typically, greenhouse models will have pets living in them, and they'll be kind of more relaxed, less institutional looking. The goal is to have people have a more normal experience. And then you have the household model, and you'll be able, when you get the presentation, to click these links. They're live. Willow Creek is a household model in the Riverside Health System, very small, no routines, no set routines, no scheduled care. You get up when you want, take your medications when you want, go to bed when you want, have a bath when you want. Very, very different from the typical scheduled care. There are also life plan communities. You have several of these in your region. You have a very well-known one called Westminster Canterbury, the Blue Ridge. But that's not the only one that you have. So these are also known as continuing care retirement communities, or CCRCs. And these are licensed by just about everybody because each level of care is licensed differently. So the Virginia State Corporation Commission licenses them with regard to their finances and their legal aspects. The health department licenses and regulates their nursing home. So does CMS. And the Department of Social Services licenses their assisted living facility. There may be more than one administrator because you might have an administrator in the skilled nursing facility. You could have a separate one in the memory care and a separate one in the assisted living facility. It's possible. The key thing about these life plan communities, they're campus style developments. They offer all the services the others do. They make a promise that you can age in place on this campus. That maybe they often include independent living as well. So you move into the independent living apartment as your needs increase. They move you up to assisted living as your needs increase. They move you into the skilled nursing facility where you end your days. And so their great draw is that although you'll have to move within the campus, you'll never have to leave the campus. All right, then we have program for the all-inclusive care for the elderly, PACE. These programs are known. You have one in your region. It's called Blue Ridge, InnovAge Virginia PACE at Blue Ridge. And this is for people who qualify for nursing home level of care, but they want to remain at home. So it's for people who are 55 and older who have a need for nursing home level of care. So they have a fairly high level of need. They have to be willing to give up their primary care physician because they go under the medical care of the PACE team. And they live at home in their own homes, but every day transportation comes, picks them up, takes them to the InnovAge PACE Day Center. And again, that's a live link, so you can look at this if you want. They spend the day in the day center. There they can receive medical care, personal care, therapies, recreational therapy included, and meals. So people get socialization, they get health care, and then they're taken home at night. And then if they need help, unscheduled care, like at night, there's the possibility to respond to them. So the idea of this model is to help people stay at home, which is where many people do want to be. All right, let's talk about how you pay for all of this. And first thing is, it's not cheap. So Genworth is a great resource for you. Genworth is an insurance company. You'll see the live link up in the top right. Every year, Genworth produces a report on the cost of long-term care across the United States, and they break it down nationally and also by state. So we have the figures for Virginia for 2023, the median monthly costs and the median annual costs. So we're calling the median, meaning half will be above that, half will be below that. Okay. And you can see it's not cheap. You can see assisted living is the median cost is around $6,400 a month, or almost $77,000 a year. You'll see that a nursing home is even more. And depending on whether you have a private room or a semi-private room, so for a private room, you're talking six figures now. You're talking over $100,000 a year. You might also note that staying at home with care is not cheap either. In fact, Genworth reckons that homemaker services could be $80,000 a year. So actually more than assisted living. And this actually, maybe that's what Nexus Insights meant, is that when you're living at home with care, depending on how much care you need, there is a tipping point. At some point, it actually becomes more cost effective to move into long-term care, to move into an assisted living facility, because the amount of care you're paying for at home. Now, some people can afford it, that's great, but if cost is a factor, then this might tip some people into the decision. You'll notice also for life plan communities, they are also not cheap at all. So you are required to put down a sizable entrance fee, anywhere from around $300,000 to over $1 million. And then on top of that, you also pay monthly fees. Now, depending on how the fees are structured for different communities, when you die, your estate may get some of that entrance fee back. But it really depends, and you would, have to read the contract for each life plan community. But the point is, long-term care is expensive. So how do people pay for this? Well, personal funds is the most common way. Paying out of pocket using their income and any of their liquid assets that are at their disposal. So that is the expectation, that most people will have these liquid assets that they can use. But there are other things that people can use. So long-term care insurance is the first one. This is really only an option to purchase this if you're younger and in good health. If you're already old and or already in poor health, they're not going to give you a policy. And the problem is, you have to get this long-term care insurance early enough and then continue to pay your premiums, which will go up every single year, and they can go up quite steeply as well. And the policies typically don't cover every aspect of a service. And one of the challenges is when this kind of insurance first came out, there were these, what they called Rolls-Royce policies, and they made the insurers go broke practically because they covered everything, and they learned their lesson pretty quickly. So I'm not saying it's a terrible option, but it's got its limitations. Reverse mortgages is another potential option. There's a couple of challenges. So with a reverse mortgage, basically, the homeowner can convert part of their ownership value into cash and remain in their home, but it has to remain their principal home. So a reverse mortgage could work to fund a short stay in assisted living or skilled nursing, say maybe up to 12 months, after which the lender would very likely call in the mortgage and say, this is clearly no longer your principal residence. The other challenge with reverse mortgages is they have a reputation for being predatory. So it's something to be kind of careful about. Life insurance policies is another option. Some policies offer like a combination insurance. It's like a combination of life insurance and long-term care insurance. Some have what's called an accelerated death benefit. That might provide tax-free advances while somebody is still living, and then the advances are subtracted from any payout once they've died. And you can also possibly sell a life insurance policy for its current value. That's known as life settlement. But there are typically restrictions, and I'm not an expert in any of these instruments. You have annuities you may be familiar with. These are insurance company contracts. They pay out either lump sum or ongoing payments on a kind of a schedule. But you really need to get expert tax advice if you're going to consider an annuity, because they can be complex. And then you have trusts. These are legally binding arrangements that allow somebody to transfer their assets into this trust, managed by somebody who they appoint, called a trustee. And these can be useful for people who are trying to access Medicaid. So there's something called an irrevocable Medicaid trust that could help somebody pay for long-term care. What it does, people transfer their assets into this irrevocable trust to bring their assets below the Medicaid level, right? Because there's an asset limit for Medicaid. But Medicaid employs a 5-year look back period. So you have to do this transfer into the irrevocable trust early enough so that you don't get caught by the 5-year look back. And again, expert advice is definitely recommended to you. Veterans benefits for any of your clients who might be a veteran will pay for some aspects of long-term care. I've given you a live link there to the Veterans Administration because I'm not an expert in this either. And it is a complicated area, but the VA will pay for care at home and in long-term care communities, but there are complications. For example, they will pay for room and board in an assisted living. They will not pay for room and board in an assisted living, but they will pay for care. So they'll make a partial payment. Like the assisted living will charge one payment every month. The VA will say, you've got to extract out of that the room and board part. We won't pay for that. We'll only pay for the care. So a veteran needs to be enrolled in the VA healthcare, and the VA will then provide each enrolled veteran with an assessment of their needs and a care plan too. And there will be companies that provide assistance with getting VA benefits. So that's something to be aware of as well. Now, there are widespread misconceptions that Medicare pays for long-term care. If you take away anything from today, please take this away. It does not pay for long-term care. Medicare does not pay for long-term care ever under any circumstances. Now, remember I talked about the rehab stays in skilled nursing facilities? I say I fall, break my hip, have surgery, have a wound, need to recover, get back on my feet. If I have a 3-day or 3-night qualifying stay in a hospital, and I'm Medicare eligible because of my age, Medicare will pay for my rehab stay. They will not pay for my long-term care stay. Okay. So in certain circumstances, Medicare will pay for a rehab stay in a skilled nursing facility, but that is not to be confused with a long-term stay, which they will not pay for. Medicaid, on the other hand, Medicaid is the insurance program that is for people on low incomes. And you will have some people are dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid. So, but Medicaid is for people living on low incomes. They will pay for long-term services and supports, as they call them. They call them LTSS, and they will pay for nursing home care. They will pay for assisted living care if the assisted living community accepts Medicaid, which is pretty rare in Virginia. Much more likely that Medicaid funded care is going to be in a skilled nursing facility. And people have to be on a pretty low income, which is about 300% of supplemental security income, which in 2024, supplemental security income limits were $2,829 a month for an individual, $4,245 for a couple. So we're really talking about with long-term care, you're going to be able to pay for it out of your pocket because you are wealthy enough, or you're going to be poor enough that Medicaid will pay for it. Or if you're lucky enough, you'll have some veterans benefit. And if you had a long-term care policy or a life insurance policy, that might help you. Okay. So, I've been yammering on here. I'm just going to pause a sec, not giving the side eye. I have another screen here and just see comments. So Krista says, both my parents died last year with multiple issues, the worst being different forms of dementia. I found the book 2023 Dementia Overview by Jerry Baller, Health Research Institute, very helpful. I'm willing to share my experiences with anyone who wants to talk with me about it. That's, Krista, I'm sorry. That's really sad. And it's actually so helpful that you're willing to help guide and mentor other people. This can be a really, really challenging situation to deal with that many adult children find themselves in. And because there is a network of supports, but they're a little complicated to navigate. Plus, typically with an adult child, adult children typically are, mid-career, have their hands full of jobs and careers and caring for family members, like younger family members as well as older family members. So yeah, it's really lovely of you to be willing to help guide other people. And Chris asks, are there Medicare Advantage plans that offer long-term care as an add-on? Chris, that is a great question that I don't know the answer to. Medicare is complicated, And there are consultants out there who are very knowledgeable about Medicare and specifically Medicare Advantage plans. I can tell you this about Medicare Advantage plans, that your geographical location matters very much because they're based on you using in-network providers. And so if you're in an area where there's really good in-network coverage, they can be great plans. If you're in an area that does not have good like network of providers, they can be a really hard choice because you're kind of stuck without many provider options. So that one I can't answer, but it's a really, really good question. And I would definitely reach out to a consultant. Like if you go on the web, you're gonna it's littered with Medicare consultants. Sorry, got a phone ringing. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's talk about how do you find these places in your region. So I'm going to show you three lookup sources, three locator sources. One that you can use to look up assisted living facilities, that's ALFs, nursing facilities and skilled nursing facilities. The difference between the nursing facility and the skilled nursing facility for your purposes, just think about them all as skilled nursing facilities. They're providing that skilled medical care. And then the PACE programs. Okay, so here's the first one. This is a screenshot of the VHCA VCAL locator. So this is the Virginia Healthcare Association and the Virginia Center for Assisted Living. This locator is free to use. I'm going to go ahead and click on the live link here, and we can try this out. So you'll see here, you come to this landing page, and we can look for an assisted living facility, a nursing facility, or a skilled. I'm going to check all three. And I'm going to pick a zip code. Let's see. Lauren had told me some zip codes and now I can't find my piece of paper, which is fun. I think somebody suggest to me a greater, okay, 22903. Thanks, Joey. 22903. All right, let's see what we get. All right, sorry for the scrolling. So we get the Cedars. Okay, we just get the Cedars. All right, well, let's look at this and see. So we're not sure what this is yet exactly, but it's telling us, okay, more info. So let's click on this and see. So Cedars Healthcare Center. Okay, so it's telling us what type. This is let's see what happens when we click on that. No, that's interesting. It just takes us back. Okay, so this is a nursing facility and a skilled nursing facility. It's quite a large one. It's got 135 beds. It looks like 8 of those, the nursing facility, those may be rehab beds, but this is large. Probably my guess would be relatively institutional based on its size. You can see we have the name of the executive director. Gregory Lee Ashley will hold a license as a nursing home administrator. He's called executive director here, but his license will be for nursing home administration. They have a website. Let's see what that teaches us. So, okay, this is what we call a chain provider. This is the owner company is called Communicare. We'll see the Communicare family of companies. And so I guess we can look and see locations. Let's put that zip code in again, 22903, see if we get more information. Now it's just telling us that again. Okay, so we found one. Let's go back. Let's try a different zip code and see. So we've got 22901. Let's try 22901 and see what we get. And we'll try all types again. Okay, so we're getting some more now. We're getting Charlottesville Health and Rehabilitation Center, Monroe Health and Rehabilitation. That rehabilitation in the name tells me they've got those short stay beds, as well as long-term care likely. And we've got Our Lady of Peace. Let's look at Our Lady of Peace. Okay, So we know that Pamela Butler is the licensed nursing home administrator. Here, she's being called administrator. On the other one, he was called executive director. It's the same thing. So, okay, they have an assisted living facility at Our Lady of Peace, and they have a nursing facility, 30 beds in the nursing facility, 68 in the assisted living. They also have a website, so we could go directly to that. Okay. And here we can explore more about what it would be like here. So all of their marketing here, testimonials from families and residents, floor plans, what's going on in the community. So it's really interesting. So they show here, they've got memory care listed. So it didn't say that on the VCAL locator, but they have memory care here. So definitely exploring people's websites is useful. Okay, so Erin says, these all look like nursing homes. How do you find assisted? I'm going to show you how to find assisted. All right, and Joey knows 2 people who stayed at Cedars after injuries for a couple of months. Personal recommendations, really, really helpful in terms of what was this place actually like? Because of course, what you're seeing here is their marketing. Okay, so VHCA and VCAL have a strong lean towards skilled nursing. You can find assisted living facilities here, but I'm going to show you another way. And I think maybe even an easier way if you're specifically looking for assisted living. This is the not so pretty site of the Virginia Department of Social Services who license assisted living facilities. Let's go to the live link for their site. If we happen to know the name of a facility, we could look that up. With location, we can, does anybody want to give me a county that we can look up by? You can just put it in the chat or shout it out. Okay, Albemarle. Let's just look in Albemarle County. So let's not use a zip code this time. We could. Now, here you're going to see how they describe this. I'm going to go ahead and check all these boxes in a minute, but the Department of Social Services, their regulation for the facility depends on level of care. So in what is called a non-ambulatory facility, they can take people who cannot safeguard themselves. Does not mean they have a memory care, because there are a lot of what are called mixed populations in assisted livings of people with cognitive impairments and people who don't have cognitive impairments. But this means that if they're non-ambulatory, they offer a higher level of care. Assisted living care is just the basic kind of scheduled and unscheduled care. And special care unit means they have a locked unit for people with dementia. So let's say, all right, why don't we just say, I wonder if there are any locked dementia units in Albemarle County. Let's see what we got. Okay, there's a lot. Look at that. These are all of the assisted living communities that have memory care. I'm going to tell you right now, some of these I recognize, and so they're not standalone memory care. Like this one you can tell is not standalone because it's assisted living and memory care. Westminster Canterbury, the Blue Ridge is a life plan or CCRC community, so they have independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing care. It's possible some of these are standalone memory cares. Let's see what happens if we, all right, I don't know that one. Let's click that one and see what happens. Okay, so that will take us to more details about this community. And it tells us some interesting things. We know who the administrator is, so Steve DeJesus. And he will be licensed as an assisted living administrator. We could even look up his license if we wanted to by going on the DHP website. This is a relatively large assisted living, 120 people. If we wanted to talk to the DSS inspector, that's who she is. We also know from this that they have a 1-year license, which is interesting. Licenses can be issued for 1, 2, or 3 years. Any assisted living facility with a 1-year license tells me either they're very new or they've had some kind of problems and they've been put on a short leash so that social services can keep an eye on them. So when we scroll down here, we can perhaps see why they're on a 1-year license, because they have a history of violating regulations. So every inspection report done by Virginia Department of Social Services for assisted living is a matter of public record. We can look at this, and we can also know if the inspection got triggered by a complaint. In this case, it was triggered by a complaint in July 2023, and there was a violation. So, all right, that maybe let's click on the other part of that, and it can show us what the violation was. Okay, so we can see that a complaint was made, and the complaint was that staff failed to report a major incident to the licensing office. Okay, and they failed to complete a fall risk rating after a fall. So this is an indication of some kind of concerns about quality of care. It's not that you have to be perfect, but it is really interesting looking up these violations to see how serious they were. And that can kind of help you determine, like we'll talk about quality in a minute. So, okay, so with the VDSS site, we get more information than we got on that VCAL, that VHCA VCAL site. So if you're looking for assisted living, this is probably the better starting point. But if you're looking for skilled nursing, you're not going to find that on this VDSS site. Okay, let's get back to our presentation. So PACE, you only have one. It's the PACE of the Blue Ridge that I showed you, live link on one of the earlier slides. But if you want to go on the Virginia Department of Medical Assistance Services site, you can see all the PACE programs in Virginia. Perhaps you're looking for a PACE program that's not in the greater Charlottesville region. So you can see there's around about 10 or 12 of these. We won't spend more time on that. All right, how do you assess, okay, so sorry, let me look at my questions here. So how can you tell who takes Medicaid? That's a great question. I think you need to contact them to find out if there are Medicaid funded beds and if the beds are open. It's complicated. I'm an assisted living facility administrator. I'm not a nursing home administrator, and their nursing homes are much more complex financially and in terms of their regulation. They have something called a case mix that they work really, really hard at to try and maximize their reimbursement. So they may try to minimize Medicaid beds if there are other higher paying reimbursement sources, because Medicaid is notorious for not paying the actual cost of long-term care. So I would definitely call them. Okay, so how do you assess the quality of the options? Well, we just saw one way, right? You can look up, if it's an ALF, if it's an assisted living facility, you can look up, see, you can find out if anyone's made complaints, you can find out if they've had violations, if these violations are just a matter of paperwork or something serious happened, or do they have like a track record? They continually have violations. The 1-year license is a little bit of an alarm bell. A 2 or 3-year license is a much better sign. All right, when we're talking about skilled nursing, there's a different way we can check quality, and it's called the 5-star rating system. So let's go into this live link, and we can look up and compare nursing homes. So I'm going to take, let me see, Fluvanna, somebody had put in the chat. All right, let's try Fluvanna, Virginia, see what we get. Oh. Okay, we're not getting some. Oh, all right. See if I can get it to bring in.
Palmyra.
Say that again?
You might try Palmyra.
Palmyra. Okay. Let's search for Palmyra. Okay, great. So now we get them on a map. We can see where they are, and we can see their CMS star rating over here. Okay, so they have a 5-star system. 1 star is the worst, 5 is the best. So they say below or much below average to much above average. So there we have Westminster, Canterbury, the Blue Ridge. It is a like gold standard Life Plan or CCR community, you see they've got a 5-star rating. We see Port Oakhurst Health and Rehabilitation has a 1-star. Albemarle has a 2-star. Louisa Health has a 3-star. Our Lady of Peace has a 4-star. The Laurels 3, Cedars 1, Colonnades 5. So you can see it's kind of all over the map. Now, I don't think it's probably fair to say that if they have 5 stars, they're perfect. And I don't think it's fair to say that if they have a low number of stars, that they are a terrible place. But it indicates they've got some problems. Very likely somehow connected to staffing. It's the biggest challenge in long-term care at this point is insufficient staffing leading to poor quality care. So, so you can use this star rating, and here again, we can use these to actually go to find out more information. Okay, so there you see, now we get a little more information about that star rating. So that was overall rating of 3. For quality, they're much above average. Staffing, they have a problem.
I don't want to interrupt, but we are 10 minutes out. And so I'm going to open up questions right now, which we've already kind of been answering.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do that, let me just say these are all live links on this slide. If you need to follow up on a complaint, you can click any of those live links. If you have a concern about abuse, neglect, exploitation financially, definitely call Adult Protective Services. Okay. So yeah, happy to take questions. And if we have time, I can quickly show you the resource guide that you're going to get as well.
Perfect. And feel free to use Zoom chat window to submit your questions or unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, how do you get to the search page on VDSS? I'm there now and I can't find it. That's why it's probably easier for you to use the links, because it's a little challenging to, let me see if I was hoping I could drop that link for you. Let me see if I can. All right, let's see if we can just get there ourselves. Unfortunately, these websites aren't like the prettiest, easiest to use, but the links in the guide that you're going to get and in the slide deck will be really helpful because they'll take you straight there. But if we were going to try and navigate there ourselves, so we're going to have to go here, and then we're going to go to licensing, and we're going to get a drop down for assisted living. And then we're not there yet. We're going to search down here on the right for assisted living. So it's a little bit of a hunt. Okay. Oh, thank you, Lauren, for dropping the link in there. So yeah, the links I've given you will take you straight here. Otherwise, you just have to do a little meandering, which is annoying. While we're waiting for another question, I want to show you something I showed Lauren before the call began. I didn't cover independent living communities, also known as active adult retirement communities, but here's an interesting site called 55places.com. And they list, I couldn't say it's complete. And I don't know if it's only for sale or rental, because they're often both kinds of communities, but you can see here, these are age restricted communities where people, are expected to be able to live independently, but they might bring in care to their home in one of these communities.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, I guess not. Well, Dr. Inker, we appreciate you sharing your expertise.
Because we're not quite out of time, I can show you the guide too. Yeah, okay. So you're going to get this. So, oh, thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for the link to the resource guide. So this guide, I'm going to scroll a little bit, so apologies, look away if that bothers you. So the table of contents is linked, so you'll be able to navigate directly to any of these sections. So some of this is what's in the slide deck. There's a reminder of what these different types of care are. All this kind of information was in the slide deck. The locators and how they work and the links to them are in this resource guide. And then what is also in this guide that was not in the slide deck are some helpful resources that have been provided by CMS, including a checklist of questions to ask, a a really nice 44-page booklet about how to choose long-term care. This is a really lovely resource, this one. Then Guide to Medicare Coverage with more details, how you can find the long-term care ombudsman. The ombudsman is the one that advocates for people living in long-term care and deals with quality concerns alongside the regulators. And then again, how to report abuse. Oh, and something else that might be useful. So I've given you a live link to 6 really short videos on preventing elder abuse. They're in a little YouTube playlist. They would not take you long to watch. And I would encourage you to watch these and also to share this link with people and make sure that we can educate as many people as possible about how we can prevent elder abuse, and if we suspect it, what we can do. Okay, that's everything that I wanted to share. I don't want to go over time. I know your time is precious.
I think they had 2 other questions, it looks like, in the chat. One was the link to the 55 plus
Oh, the link to
community.
the 55 plus community. Yes. So I'm going to drop that in the chat now. The other thing I might say to you all, a word of warning, there are organizations that will help you find long-term care. A Place for Mom is one, Care Connections is another. I would use them with caution. I think their services are good, but they can actually become kind of harassing in the amount that they will contact you. If you use them, like they'll more than happily pull you a list of long-term care communities in any given area, and then they will hound you relentlessly. They'll call you, they'll text you, they'll keep checking on you, and it's really hard to get them to stop. So I had that experience with my own mom, and it put me off using them. Typically, they're free for you to use, but what happens is if you do move into one of the communities they recommend, that community will pay a finder's fee to the organization. So they're in it making their commission, of course. Okay, and another, oh yeah, Place Mom overwhelmed me with emails and calls. Yeah, Chris, I know it took me ages to make them go away. Right, did I miss any questions? Anything else anybody had?
I think that was everything.
Okay, maybe just one more thing. Like, I encourage you, you can reach out directly to me or via Lauren. If you have questions or I can be helpful to you, or you're not sure about something, please reach out. I would love you to.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And it was very, very insightful and helpful today. So that's been amazing.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah.